Are you worried about being laid off? Or maybe you have been laid off. Episode 157 on Finding Better Podcast, we're going to talk to Catherine Booker Velas about her journey because the fact of the matter is, bad things happen in life, and it's not a matter of whether they happen, it's a matter of how you respond to them. And so she's going to take us through her journey of having lived with the job of her dreams, expecting to have that job for the rest of her life, then waking up one day and finding that that job wasn't there. She's going to take us through setback to comeback. And now she inspires people by telling her story. This too shall pass, and her life is better than ever. She's got a bigger purpose than she had, and it can happen to you too. Here we go. Hello, 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 and welcome back to our Finding Better podcast. My name is John Suzuki, and I am your host. And this is where we talk about really, really cool things that you can apply to your own life because it's all about experiences. It's all about wisdom of people who have been there and done that. Because, you know, sometimes the best path to success is to follow the ones who have been there and done that, right? And today I have Esther Avant with me, and this is going to be a really, really fun conversation. Esther, welcome to Finding Better.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. So I'm going to start with a quote from Esther, and here it is. I help busy people break through the barriers to better health so they can build sustainable habits that enhance their entire lives. So, yes, this episode is about finding better health. And I want to share Esther's background because it's really, really relevant. Okay. Esther is a health industry veteran with 20 years of experience as a personal trainer and nutrition coach. And she has personally, this is the experience part, which is so cool. She has personally wrestled, as we all have, with an all or nothing approach, swinging between strict diets, over exercising, and overeating, right? Pouring energy into our health without seeing the results that we think we deserve. She went through that. That struggle taught her the value of consistency and balance, a middle ground she now lives daily, juggling a business, a family, and health goals while prioritizing mental, physical, and emotional well-being over the scale. Okay, and we're going to talk about that because health isn't just physical, it's about mental, physical, and emotional well-being. She's a keynote speaker. She's a workshop facilitator. She's a co-owner of Made by Me Coaching, and she's the author of the best-selling book, To Your Health, A Lifestyle of Health, Happiness, and Confidence, and host of the To Your Health podcast. There's a lot wrapped up in what I just said about you, Esther. And, you know, we talk about consistency. I just talked about lifestyle, right? So let's kick this off and let's just get to the punchline here in terms of what folks are going to get out of listening to us together. What would you say are the top three takeaways people can expect from this episode that nobody ever talks about?
Yeah, great question. Number one, a better understanding of why it is that you feel like you keep starting over with your health. We're going to pinpoint the exact kind of universal barriers that we all face that we have a tendency to overlook. Everybody blames themselves and thinks like there's just something wrong with me. I'm not motivated. I'm not disciplined. That's not it. So takeaway number one is going to be why it's so hard to make your health a consistent priority.
Cool.
Number two, we can't
Okay.
just leave you with the problems and no solutions. So number two, the second takeaway is going to be how to overcome those barriers. We're going to talk about my FIT framework to do exactly that. And number three, we want you to leave feeling empowered to actually do something with all of this information. So figuring out where your starting point is and what you're actually how you're going to use this episode as a catalyst for taking action in your own health.
That is amazing. You know, this is why I love doing this podcast so much, right? Because we're giving. I mean, you are going to give some of the best of what you have, and we're not going to end this by saying, "Hey, if you want to understand, if you know, telling everybody that they have to buy your book, they can, right? But they're going to walk away with things just by listening to us. So, with that, let's get right into this. This is going to be fun. Why is it so hard? Why is it so hard?
Yeah, great question. So I think it's so important to kind of acknowledge the fact that it is hard. And if you are feeling that way, it's not because there's something wrong with you or you are in a uniquely different situation than most people. We tend to internalize anytime we feel like we're not doing things right or living up to our potential or aren't getting the results that we want, we tend to internalize it. We're not out there broadcasting, I'm having a hard time being healthy, or I keep gaining weight and I'm not losing it, or
That's
I'm on all
true.
these medications. We're not talking about that.
Yeah,
But what happens is that then everybody is in sort of this silo feeling like, why can't I figure this out? Everybody else seems to have figured it out. Why is it so hard for me? So I think it's so important to recognize that most people find this difficult. We don't have the rates of overweight and obesity and the health concerns that we have in our country because it's easy. If it was easy, we wouldn't have all these issues. So, number one, you are not alone. Number two,
you can't,
the
before we go to
yeah,
number two, that is so true. We're not alone. Life's hard. Life's not fair. Life's a bitch. I mean, it's all life is wonderful, but you know, to know that, and the way that you just talked about that is just so poignant. It's so true because we talk about a lot of things, but we talk about the thing we tend to share the things that make us feel good sharing, and that is going to impress people. And we all have a hard time, or a lot of us, maybe most of us, maybe all of us, have a hard time being vulnerable, right?
hmm
And if folks are gonna go out there and do what you're talking about and share that. I'm having a hard time. I'm on all these medications. I want to get the hell off. I want to, you know what I mean? And share that. It requires a level of vulnerability that I think a lot of people have a hard time. I Now that you've told me this, now that you said it, now it's top of mind. It's not sitting in the back of my mind. I am actually going to share that with the folks who are closest to me, right? That I want their support, and I
this
don't
is
want
going
to
to
be
tie
alone.
in so nicely once we get into the solutions because
But
having support is a big
am
part
I
of it.
am I on the right track?
You sure are. And
Okay.
you're exactly right. It's hard out here. We've got jobs, we've got families, we're trying to take care of ourselves. It's a lot. So y- you are not the problem if you're feeling like you can't kind of get the hang of this and you keep, starting over every New Year's or every Monday or whatever. It's not your lack of discipline, it's not laziness, it's not lack of motivation. No one has those things all the time. No one's motivated all the time. And I could take anybody listening right now and I could find examples of how you are disciplined and motivated and not lazy. So those are not the things. So, okay, then what are the things? Universally, we come up against the same challenges. Lack of time, right? You,
Yeah.
you always hear
Yeah.
we have the same 24 hours in a day, but it's like, well, if I look at, the 24 hours of a pregnant mom with, three under three at home and, she's working full time and her husband travels, if I look at those 24 hours as compared to, maybe a celebrity who has this whole team of people to service them, right? Yes, the hours are the same, but what we can get done in them is different. So time is a legitimate challenge that we're all up against. I think time and the challenge of overwhelm go hand in hand because the reality is being healthy doesn't need to be very time consuming. We just
Yep.
feel that it does because we have a hard time discerning what matters and what doesn't and how to prioritize all the things. So we feel like we need to do them all and that feels overwhelming and then we don't even bother starting. So that's the first pretty universal challenge that we all face. I've never talked to anybody who says, I have plenty of time every day. I
Yeah.
have
I have all
I
the
have a
time in the
surplus
world.
of time,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
All right, so that's number one. Number two, you nailed it a little bit ago, is the lack of help or support. And generally, it's not because those things can't exist in our lives. It's because we don't feel comfortable being vulnerable and asking for the help that we need. So that's another challenge is we sort of have this like streak of independence or ego or stubbornness where we just feel like I should be able to do this by myself. And if I have to ask for help, that's going to make me feel weak or vulnerable or less than in some way. And I don't want that. So I'm just going to keep trying on my own, even though I am making it harder. So that's the second is the lack of help or support.
That is so true. We live in a culture of productivity, right?
Hmm.
I mean, we talked about work. Even when we're among our friends, we want to present this image of productiveness, right? Of success, of all these things. And when it comes to our health, we still want to do that, but that that holds us. I mean, it holds us back. I mean, it's contrary. It's contrary to the opportunity to getting help and support, even by those you love. And that, when you say getting help and support, that doesn't mean you got to go out and hire
Mm-mm.
a freaking professional trainer, or right. I mean, just getting that support around you um, can help a lot. Anyway, sorry, you're
Yeah.
just hitting a lot of really relevant points that are really helpful to understand.
I'm so glad.
Um,
So then let's talk about the third one. And this one you touched on in the intro. The third challenge that we face, and I think this is really kind of the root of the issues that nobody's talking about, is our tendency to be all or nothing, really black and white, really our own toughest critics. And we hold ourselves to these really impossibly high standards. And we feel like, okay, I've reached this low point. I'm going all in. I'm going to revamp everything. There comes in the overwhelm. And we're expecting flawless and immediate and like knock your socks off results. That everything I'm going to do everything perfectly. And inevitably we don't. We fall short in any number of ways at any point in the future. And instead of taking it in stride and sort of acknowledging, yeah, I should have known, this wasn't going to be smooth sailing. That's okay. I'm going to pick myself up and move on. We are really, really mean to ourselves. We start that kind of negative self-talk of this is what always happens. You're such a failure. You're never going to be able to figure this out. I don't know why you keep trying because this is what's, inevitable. We just like really berate ourselves. And then of course, we're not feeling really jazzed to pick ourselves up and keep moving forward. We just feel like failures. And that then turns us back toward coping mechanisms like food or alcohol or shopping or watching binge watching Netflix, things like that. So we have these starts and stops, and nothing kills your momentum faster than coming to a screeching halt for a week, 2 weeks, a month, 6 months, a year, and then trying to start from a dead stop again. So one of the biggest challenges we face is developing the right skills and the right mentality to take this kind of journey in stride and recognize that it's going to be a growth process. There are going to be things that we don't know how to do, we can't do very well, we fall short of our expectations, and that it's all just part of it. That we can learn from them, we can do better in the future, and that's the only way to actually get where we're going is to learn from our slip ups.
you know, I use the analogy all the time of building a muscle,
Mm,
right? And when it comes to building muscles, any muscle, it could be a muscle of self-esteem, or the muscle of confidence, or a muscle, I again, uh, as an analogy, um, you don't build muscles overnight,
mhm,
right? And it seems like that is kind of the approach, though, that people take when it comes to their health. That I'll do this for 2 weeks, and then everything's going to be great. No, right? That as they say, the proverbial, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon,
Hmm.
right? And it does take training, and it does take habits, and it does take building those muscles to move forward with this, right?
1,000%. And having realistic expectations from the jump and acknowledging this is going to take some time is so crucial. Because when you have that mismatch, that's when, like you said, you put in a couple weeks worth of effort. And you're like, oh, well, I thought I was going to be way further along by now. That must mean it's not working. So I'm not
Right.
going to bother. Instead of, yeah, this is me kind of laying the foundation. I didn't get to where I am overnight. I'm not going to get back to where I want to be overnight. I need to be patient. I need to continue. And this is one of the toughest parts. I need to continue putting in the work before I have the evidence that it's working. I have to really be committed and trust that I'm putting my efforts in the right places and that if I just continue to, they are, they're going to pay off. If you can think about kind of like a garden, right, where you plant your seeds and you get the fertilizer and you water them and you space them appropriately, but you spend a good chunk of time watering your dirt and hoping that you're going to get, a little bit of growth at some point, right? You don't know that you're going to. You're hopeful and you're thinking, well, I'm following the process, I'm doing the steps, and if I just keep doing that, hopefully at some point I'm gonna reap the benefits. And then you get, the little sprout. And you're like, all right, well, it's not a full blown, tomato yet, but it's a step in the right direction. It's a sign that what I'm doing is working. It's very similar with your own health. You cannot expect to see the garden first and then be willing to water it. You need to put in the effort and trust that it's going to pay off.
I've got a fun little story that I just thought of. It was about my mom, and she passed away years ago. But during World War II, she was in Japan, and so she was on the receiving end of the American bullets and bombs.
Mm.
And she was telling me, she's the oldest of six siblings, and she was telling me a story one day how they were starving. They were in Japan. They were starving. It was in the middle of World War II, and she found a peanut. She just randomly found a peanut. And so she decided, I'm going to plant this peanut and I'm going to make more peanuts to make more food. So she planted this peanut and she loved this peanut and she took care of the peanut and she watered the peanut. And for months, nothing happened. Just this little thing grew out of the ground, but nothing happened. And she got really frustrated one day and she grabbed the plant and she yanked it out of the ground. And she had peanuts.
Oh my gosh.
She didn't know that peanuts grew underground. She thought it was a peanut tree that was going to happen. Yeah, and so she was saying that was the best meal she'd ever had in her life. Of course, they were starving in Japan, and in the middle of the war. But that to your point of nurturing and loving and watering and you keep doing the work. And eventually, something good's going to happen. I was thinking about something, where he said it's hard to measure, right? As you're going. I wrote down double the dumbbell. Okay, so folks, try this. You know, get a dumbbell and get to just do a weight test and get to the weight where you can do 10 repetitions with the dumbbell. And the 10th one is pretty hard, right? Set a goal to double that weight. Set a goal to double the weight. And when you reach that goal, and during that time that you're working to double that weight, you're don't keep going, keep going, keep going with the regime, keep going, keep going. And then when you get to the point of being able to measure your ability to double that weight from be it 10 pounds to 20 pounds or 20 pounds to 40 pounds and doing 10 repetitions, then take a look at what happened.
I
That
love
might
that.
be
Yeah, it gives
that
you
might be a way to, yeah, to
it
measure
gives you something to
success.
focus on. Yeah. Another takeaway from the story about your mom, just how important it is to be clear on what progress looks like for you. I think that's something that a lot of people don't do is we tend to, as you touched on in the beginning, we tend to equate our health, our whole health with the number on the scale, with our weight. And a lot of times, basically everybody says, I want to be healthy. But that definition of health is different from person to person. I used to do sales calls for a coaching business, and I would talk to people, across the country throughout the day. And, I'd talk to a middle-aged male truck driver and a retired, grandma, and they would both say, I want to be healthy, but what they were visualizing was different. He wanted to be healthy, and he meant I can get in and out of my big rig without effort. I don't feel so stiff and achy at the end of the day that I'm not putting on weight because I'm eating at, gas stations all the time. She meant I want to be able to sit down on the floor with my grandkids and stand back up again. I want to be able to push them on the playground without my shoulders hurting. So I think defining health for ourselves is really important. And that ties in with the peanut is like, all right, well, if you're looking at the scale to tell you if you're making progress, but what you really care about is your flexibility or your blood pressure or your cholesterol or any number of metrics that is not measured by the scale, then you've got the same mismatch. Then you're looking at, why isn't my peanut tree sprouted? When in the reality,
Right.
you are actually getting the result that you want. So that can be a great first step is just to kind of sit down and say, how do I define health for me? Does it include spending time outdoors, having healthy relationships, socializing however often? Does it include my sleep? Does it include my mental health? Like this really more a broader definition for yourself of what do I think a healthy person does and which of those things am I already doing and where do I have opportunities to improve my health by focusing on some of those things?
It occurs to me for two things. Two things. First of all, the damn scale, that GD scale. Why is it, Esther, that and maybe it's a cultural thing, but why is it that we place so much weight? Nope, nope. But maybe I'm answering my own question. But why is it that we do place so much of a priority or of our consciousness of what health means on the scale, and how do we snap out of it?
Yeah, it's such a great question. And I think it's multifaceted. I think it is cultural. I think especially for women, it's, media of seeing, women's the ideal female body has certainly changed even over the course of my life, from kind of the stick thin Victoria's Secret runway model to like the Kardashian. But in any case, there's a lot of noise about, what women should look like. And
Yeah.
I think to your point earlier that a lot of health stuff can be difficult to measure, so using a dumbbell to gauge your progress, I think the scale has become kind of the default just because of ease of use. It's almost like the
Yeah.
proxy for all things health, but in that we have missed kind of the forest for the trees. So I think hearing and having conversations like this can help us snap out of it and recognize there's so much more to us than the number on the scale, and there's so much more to our health. And then I think what we were just talking about, defining health for yourself and figuring out, do I need a scale to help me figure out if I'm healthy? Maybe so. Maybe you're in a position where losing weight will, very likely improve your health drastically, in which case that can be a very useful metric. But maybe you're not. Maybe when you think about what it means for you to be healthy, it's something that you could measure in other ways. You could measure in minutes of movement per week. You could measure in servings of vegetables per day. You could measure in hours of sleep, in, time spent outdoors. There are probably, and at the very least, the scale should be used in conjunction with them. But, using myself as an example, I haven't used a scale since I was pregnant. My son's about to be 7. And I just knew at the time that it was going to get in my head. I knew that my body needed to get larger to, sustain this other human life. But I didn't want there to be any sort of negativity associated with that. I didn't want to make myself feel bad for doing what my body needed to do. So I just decided, yeah, I'm gonna ask the doctor, not gonna tell me. I'm gonna face away. And I don't know what I weighed then. And it just felt so freeing that I never went back. And now I have lots of other ways that I can tell if I'm looking good, if I'm feeling good, if I'm meeting my definition of health. So maybe somebody out there has been feeling sort of like a slave to the scale, and maybe you want to challenge yourself with what would it be like to take an extended break from that? How would I define my success or my progress if I didn't have that metric to go by?
Well, you mentioned the grandmother who just wanted to be able to sit on the floor with her kids. I mean, that she works out, she builds her health to the point to where she can get up and down off the ground. That is a measure of success, right?
Right.
Or the truck driver who can figure out ways to not feel so sore at the end. Those things. I mean, those setting those goals and setting what I mean, that is just so powerful. Sitting down and asking yourself, what does it mean to you to be healthy? Because don't, part of the reason why I love this podcast is because I have people like you on it. We're not there. The world is just so full of bullshit. Excuse my French, right? But especially with social media and the messages I call them messages of inadequacy. We're bombarded
Mm,
by these messages that say you're not good enough or you need to look like me if you're going to be happy and cool, right? And this podcast, what you're sharing with folks, you're beautiful, you know, and you have your unique goals. You are a unique individual, and and yet we're so conditioned that women should look like those Victoria's Secret models on that runway, and it's just so not true. I like to flip through different exercise videos, on YouTube. And I'll tell you, I come across exercise and I do them. I do them and I do them and I keep leveling up until uh you know uh my performance until I reach that level of performance and I find another video. And I'll tell you, I can't tell you how many times I see people who are part of this exercise thing, like walking for 30 minutes or cardio for 30 minutes. And there are people on there who look to me as being clearly overweight, right? I mean, they certainly aren't the Victoria's Secret models, and they're not even the what the
Kardashians.
stereotype of, yeah, they're not the Kardashian, they're not the stereotype of health, right? And these people are pretty heavy and they're kicking my ass, right? I mean, these people I can't keep up with them. And I'm like, holy cow, this is really cool. And they are fit, right? And so, it's getting into our own heads and kind of shifting things. My daughter, and I'm gonna say this, and I'm not gonna say too much, otherwise I'll lose it. Has bulimia and she has an eating disorder. And eating disorders, like a lot of disorders, you don't get rid of. They're with you for life. It's a mental issue and it's a mental disease. And she really, really struggled with it. And she fought it really hard. And she's doing great. She's doing wonderfully. But she did a lot of the things that you're saying, right? Understand that. And the biggest thing was, what does it mean to me to be healthy?
Mhm.
Right? Not what is the stereotype that I have to live up to that looks like health. It's what does it mean to me? So that is such a great point, that I think will help a lot of people.
I'm so glad. So I want to make sure that we follow through on our objectives for today. So let's talk
Yes,
about some of
please.
the solutions. So we've talked a lot
Okay.
about the problems. We can
And
all agree that
okay,
like
I'm sorry. One more quick thing. One
Yeah.
more quick thing. We've been speaking mostly about physical health, right? Can you talk a little bit about the emotional side and the mental health side of what folks can do to build up those muscles?
Yeah. What I think is so cool is that all of the components of health are so interconnected. So, for example, a lot of times our relationship with food is kind of fraught with emotion because we are taught and shown from a very early age that food is comfort, which it can be, but it becomes kind of the primary and sometimes the only coping mechanism that we have. So, one of the best things that you can do for your mental health, as well as will likely benefit your physical health, is developing a vaster array of coping mechanisms. So, learning, developing a journaling practice, maybe seeing a mental health professional, a therapist, or a psychiatrist, understanding what other things can I do when I'm feeling big emotions that will help me actually feel them, process them, work through them, do something with them, rather than trying to cover them up with a band-aid, which could be food or alcohol or, sex or shopping or any number of different things. But that's just an example of how interconnected it is. So your mental health will improve by developing those skills, and then you are more likely to eat a nutritious diet in the right quantities that's going to benefit your physical health. Emotionally, things like having relationships where you have close social ties to people. You get out and you do things outside of the house. You have people that you feel comfortable, like you mentioned earlier, being vulnerable with. Again, that can become an outlet for your mental health where you have people to turn to for help and support and
Absolutely.
guidance to say like
Yep.
I'm really having a hard time right now, and that can be a release that helps mentally. It also, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the book Together, I think it was called, by Vivek Murthy. He was our former Surgeon General, about the loneliness epidemic and how being socially isolated can be as damaging to our health as smoking cigarettes. So, understanding that there's so much more than just the physical, but very often they end up tied together, where if you are developing
Right.
these social connections, those are opportunities to get out and do active things with them, to enjoy fresh air, to take walks, to try a new sport or a new activity, to learn how to cook healthy foods. That it just all goes together. So we have such a narrow scope generally of, oh, my workouts and my meal plan, but the reality of it is your mental, emotional, social health is all so important and interconnected.
And I have a feeling we're going to talk more about it as we now talk about empowerment. Yeah.
Yes. So we'll kind of go in order. So I developed the FIT framework to address the barriers that we've just been talking about. So the F in the FIT framework is figuring out your big rock habits that are going to generate the majority of your results. So we talked about some of the biggest barriers being your time and overwhelm. If we hone in on the big rocks, we're going to cut through the overwhelm and we're going to make it more likely that we can do the things that matter in less time. So, obviously, this is going to vary a bit depending on what we've talked about so far, your goals and your definition of health. But generally speaking, what is beneficial for most people is eating enough fiber, getting enough protein, eating a relatively, minimally processed diet, eating the right number of calories, drinking water, strength training, walking, sleeping, managing stress. Things like that are kind of your big rocks.
Or any one
And
of them.
that's exactly
Start with one. Just start
exactly what I was going to
drinking a
say.
lot of water. Start with that.
Right, that we don't want to cause overwhelm on the back of overwhelm by
Right,
saying you need to
right,
be doing these
right.
10 big rocks, but more so exactly what you said, just pick one. And there's kind of two approaches to this. You can go with the low hanging fruit, water being a great example of, you know what? I just kind of feel like I've been dead in the water for a while. I haven't really been doing anything for my health. I'm feeling like I'm really on thin ice at all by trying to try again. So I'm going to do something that is pretty easy and is the low-hanging fruit that will just make me feel like I've accomplished something and like I'm getting a little bit of momentum and I'm getting some wins under my belt. Because once the ball is in motion, I'm a lot more likely to then feel able to tackle the next thing. So that's one option if you're really feeling overwhelmed. The other is, yes, I have a tendency to overwhelm myself, but I also know I'm somebody who needs to see kind of some fruits of my labor pretty early on, and I'm ready, I'm willing to tackle maybe a bigger fish, knowing that it's going to take a little bit more effort, but I am going to see the payoff more quickly. And that is what's going to keep me motivated to continue going. So you can pick either, but you're exactly right. You got to start somewhere. And this is not to say do all of these things simultaneously. It's to figure out I'm probably already doing a couple of them. Maybe I always get my sleep in, or maybe I'm solid with my water. So celebrate that, leave that alone, and then pick one or two that you set your sights on, and you really treat it in with a long-term vision of eventually I want to be doing all these things pretty simultaneously. But I know from past experience that if I bite off more than I can chew, I'm going to end up right back where I started. So, what
Right.
would it look like to
Right.
do it differently and to do less and really get it ingrained as a habit before I start piling more things on? That's how you're actually going to cut through the overwhelm.
One step at a time, right? I mean, what's the old saying? Rome wasn't built in a day, or New York
Yeah.
wasn't built in a day. Something wasn't built in a day, right?
Right.
I
None of them
mean,
were built in a day.
it takes time, and just yeah, okay, awesome. What's next?
All right, so that's the F. That's figuring out your big rocks. That's going to help with your overwhelm. The I is increasing your support system. We talked about how hard it can be to ask for help, but just how much it does help when you get over that discomfort. And like you mentioned, it doesn't necessarily mean hiring a trainer or a coach or a dietitian. It could just be enlisting the people who are already around you or starting to add people to your support system who are walking the walk or who are on a similar path. So it's not to say you need to get rid of your existing friends, but maybe you recognize nobody else really seems like they care as much about getting healthy as I do. And it's tough for me because I get sort of pulled back to the status quo. And I want to introduce myself to more people who are active or who know how to do the things that I would like to learn. So maybe you start adding a a weekly cooking class or a walking group or an exercise class, and you start meeting people there who have similar goals and definitions of health. That can help a ton. But you also mentioned earlier just enlisting the help of your family, your friends, your partner. And this is so often overlooked. I work largely with middle-aged women, many of whom are married, and often the husbands sort of get positioned as the opposition, right? He's always bringing home my favorite candy when he knows I've had a long day, or he thinks
Yeah.
he's being nice and he comes back with this bottle of wine, and now I'm between a rock and a hard place where I want to drink it and he did it for me. And it's just like that lack of communication
Yeah.
where have you ever explicitly said to him, I'm trying to drink less or I'm trying to eat less candy. And I so appreciate your thoughtfulness when you bring those things home for me. I would really, here's what you could do for me that I would really appreciate. If you know I've had a long day, I would love it if you started running a bath and you put my book in the bathroom and you just let me like be alone for 30 minutes and I could just relax that way. It's asking explicitly and not expecting people to somehow know what it is that they can do to help you. That really goes a long way.
Wow. That was like a boom moment for me, right? I mean, that's really cool. You know, what I was thinking about, and the reason why I was smiling was because I thought you were going to say something like, instead of bringing me that bottle of wine, bring me a stick of celery or something. Um, but you know, just something as simple as that, right? I mean, that would. I'm just thinking about my own wife and how cool that would be for her. You know, just to have the bath ready for her, make a bath for her. You know, and because she loves her baths. So that's really cool. Okay,
Yeah.
sorry for the
Yeah.
interruption.
No, I'm so glad. And that's exactly it is just kind of getting again, a lot of this, a lot of being a healthy person is being willing to develop new skills. And although you might not be thinking, I need to hone my communication skills in order to be healthier, not only will it benefit your relationships, but it will also then benefit your physical health, your mental health, to be able to advocate for yourself, to be able to set boundaries, to be able to ask for what you want, to give people feedback. All of those things are not the first things that come to mind, but are helping you get to the root of why it's been hard up until this point.
And the other thing too that strikes me. I talked about the ills of social media, but social media
Mm-hmm.
can be a good thing too,
It can be.
right? I mean, there are Facebook groups. There are, there's all kinds of these groups and support things that
Mm-hmm.
you can participate in online. And so it doesn't, what I found is that a lot of people they'll go, well, gosh, the people around me, and they don't want to embarrass themselves.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want to come across eventually as failing, whatever it is they put out there. That's the vulnerability part. Well, you know what? Maybe start off with an online group.
Yeah.
My daughter, I talk about my daughter again. Um, she joined this mom's group, and anytime she's got a question about something that's happening with the kids, right? I mean, she's on this group, and she found her doctors that way. She found, I mean, it's just amazing, right? So in that kind of sense, social media can be a really wonderful thing. And so if the people immediately around you might be a little bit uncomfortable for you to approach, get online. And and if you don't like it, you don't have to walk into it anymore. You just walk away. So, okay, yeah.
That's an excellent point. It is, yeah, social media can be a double-edged sword, but it can also be what you make of it. And there's
Yeah.
so much value.
Yeah.
I also have a similar mom group where my husband kind of rolls his eyes where I'm like, well, they said in this group, they said.
You know,
Um, but you're right. It's a good kind of first step, especially if you're somebody who maybe has social anxiety or isn't used to putting yourself out there, just to like start
right.
kind of like you said,
Right.
flexing those muscles and getting comfortable just interacting with people. And you never know where it might lead. If it's a local group, maybe it transitions offline. But even if not, even if it remains through the computer or you find a couple of people in that group where now you start texting or you start talking on the phone or you just kind of become closer to them, it's a really great way to because you're right, sometimes people don't have the support around them for any number
Right.
of reasons. And we have at our fingertips. We have all the people we could possibly want as long as you're willing to seek them out and kind of find the needle in the haystack.
Right. Take a chance. Take a chance because you're talking about loneliness. I mean, loneliness is known today as an epidemic. I think the most recent statistic I heard is that 30% of the population experiences some level of severe loneliness every year,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a big deal, right? And so it what we're talking about, folks, does not come without challenging yourself, right?
Yep, that is
But make a
exactly it.
decision. I say all the time, and people who listen to my podcast have heard me say this, that your life is a product of the choices that you make.
Mm-hmm.
And people say, well, I couldn't choose my family. Well, okay, so see if you agree with this. Your life, the product of your life in the future is going to depend on the choices and decisions you make from this day forward. And a lot of times decision choices aren't easy, right? A lot of times. But
Yeah.
you make the choice, you make the decision, you move on and you make it happen because you can,
Exactly.
right?
It's yeah,
Yeah.
very much, it's not your fault, but it's your responsibility. That sure, you didn't choose your
And it's
family.
your
You
opportunity,
exactly.
you know?
And this ties in perfectly with the two T's of the FIT framework, which are what help combat the all or nothing mentality and sort of that inflexibility of just like, well, this is how it is, this is who I am, there's nothing I can do about it. It's two I consider them kind of flip sides of the same coin or opposite ends of the spectrum. Number one, treating yourself with compassion. We talked about how hard we are on ourselves, and you just really can't
Yes.
you can't hate yourself into better health. It needs to come from a place of love and kindness and acceptance and understanding, just like you would extend to another person. So the compassion comes in when things aren't going the way you would like, when you don't see results as quickly, or you don't follow your plan to a T, or just kind of anything happens that you would naturally start to cut yourself down for. You pause and you ask yourself, what would I say if my daughter or my best friend or my mom came to me saying the things that I'm saying to myself? How would I help them see that this doesn't need to be such a big deal and I don't need to be so hard on myself? If you don't have compassion, it is very, very hard for you to keep picking yourself up and carrying on because you have convinced yourself that it's not going to matter anyway. So it's very important to be compassionate. And also, we need to, the second T is take ownership or take responsibility for our ourselves, for our health, for our future. And that means we do something about the lessons that we're learning. We don't just continue to make the same missteps and let ourselves off the hook. We acknowledge it's okay that it happened. It's okay that you're an imperfect human being. And also, how can I learn from this so I can grow and I can do better in the future? The really easy example is like a lot of people struggle with their health over the weekends. They tend to have more structure during the work week, so it's easier to eat better and to drink less and to get in the groove with working out. And then
That
it's like
happens to you
all
too?
it
Seriously?
sure does.
That happens
But
to
then
you?
it's like all bets are off come the weekend, right? And there we gotta not let ourselves get caught off guard by things we could have known were going to happen, right? The weekend happens every week. The summer
Yeah.
happens every year. The holidays happen every year. So we can't just go week after week, month after month, year after year, being unprepared for these recurring things. So that's where the ownership comes in of, yeah, it's okay that you ate your body weight in Christmas cookies as you were baking them this year. And what could we learn from that so that next time you're around cookies or next time you're baking or any sort of similar circumstance, you don't behave in such a way that you end up feeling guilty or ashamed or badly about yourself. So that's when you start to find the lessons and then apply them in the future so that little by little you are learning and growing and mastering these new skills so that instead of having all of these starts and stops and the pendulum swings from doing too much to doing too little, you just find a place in the middle where you're showing up for yourself and your health pretty consistently all the time, and you have the systems in place to know when you're kind of straying from where you want to be, and you can count on yourself. You have the self-trust to get yourself back to where you want to be. You need both the compassion and the ownership.
As you were going through that, I was thinking about Rocky, right? Sylvester Stallone. And I was thinking about Rocky, I don't know which one it was, but it was when Apollo Creed, I think it was maybe Rocky 3, Apollo Creed became his coach. And when you talk about self-compassion, I think about that story, and I think about Apollo Creed and how hard he was on Rocky. But he wasn't mean, he was pushing him on. He wasn't saying he was stupid. He wasn't saying he was lazy. And yet those are the words that come to us when we think about ourselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you talk about self-compassion. I mean, I think about that show and how motivating and how inspiring Apollo Creed was to get Rocky to keep going, keep going, keep pushing through, because I think it was Mr. T. I mean, he was like this animal guy that Rocky had to fight, and he lost at the beginning of the show. But but there was a lot of fear that Rocky had. And, not once did Apollo Creed criticize him. Not once did Apollo Creed say he was a loser. Not once did he say anything of the ilk that we say to ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so when you talk about treat yourself with compassion, it's right. It's about self-compassion and taking ownership. The other thing that occurred to me is know your why.
Mm-hmm.
Know your why. Why are you doing this? Because and that why is something deep down. It's not just, oh, I want to look better, right? I mean, why? Create that
Right.
why that keeps you going and sustains you. Like in Rocky, I mean, his why was to beat that guy, right? I mean, at the end, every Rocky show, he's got a why. He's got a massive why of why he's going to get the crap knocked out of him. And we don't have to go to that extent of, of creating our why, but that's just kind of a really cool metaphor. And taking ownership and learning and making yourself better as you go along. Um, so all right, so figure out your big rocks, right?
Hmm.
And take them on one at a time. Folks, if you're not big on drinking water, start with that. You are going to feel different. You're going to feel better. You're going to sleep better. I mean, just drinking water is it's amazing. I drink lots of water. It really is a miracle thing. So figure out your big rocks, increase your support system. We talked a lot about that, right? I mean, if you have to get online, use the beauty of social media. Just don't get caught up in it, right? Don't get addicted to it. And then first T is treat yourself with compassion. Treat yourself like Apollo Creed treated Rocky or any coach or any. You're not gonna anyway. Yeah, yeah. Bring that positive energy into your life, into your own life, yourself. And the second T was take ownership. Take ownership for your health and for your future. And this has been amazing. This has been amazing. Folks, if you're not walking away with something amazing that you can do to help improve and make your fitness, make your health better, maybe you weren't listening, but this was full of a lot of amazing things. Um, all right, Esther, what else? What else do you want to share?
Well, our third objective, I just want to kind of reiterate what you just said is, we want to make sure that this episode can be a catalyst for you to take action and ultimately to better your health and to change your life. So figure out whatever is standing out to you, whether it's one of the components of the framework, whether it's a big rock, whether it's like, hey, you know what? John said water is an easy place to start. I'm going to do that. But challenge yourself to take one of your takeaways from this episode and implement it in your life. Let go of everything else. Do not allow this to be a vessel for overwhelm. Take one thing that you're going to focus on for the next 1 week, 2 weeks, month. When you feel like you've gotten a handle on that, or when you've taken the action, you've added, you've found a support group, or you've spoken to a partner, then come back, listen again, get another takeaway, or jot down a whole list of possibilities and just keep revisiting it. But don't let it be something that just kind of goes in one ear and out the other, and you nod for a little bit and then you go on with your life. Do something with it. That would be my final takeaway.
And that reminds me of the old saying that knowledge is power, and that is so untrue. It's not knowledge that's power, it's the application of knowledge that's
Right.
power.
Yeah.
Okay? You can walk away from this now you got more knowledge. If you don't do anything with it, it's useless.
Hmm.
It doesn't empower you at all, right? So this has been amazing. And Esther, I can see why you're so good at what you do.
Thank
Um,
you.
Folks, if you want to get in touch with Esther to ask her questions or to understand, if you like more, her information is in the notes. But just as a reminder, the name of her book is To Your Health, a lifestyle of health, happiness, and confidence. Okay, and you get it on Amazon. And so with that, Esther, thank you so much. Thank you so much. This episode has been about finding better health, and we talked about finding better physical health, finding better mental health, finding better emotional health, finding better. I mean, we talked about all of it. And so, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. Time flew by. I hope it was as fun to listen to as it has been to talk about.
Yeah, I've had a great time. Esther, I love you. God bless you. Thank you again for joining me. Folks, I love you. God bless you. Thank you for listening. Share this. There's somebody out there who needs to hear this. So share it. Okay? That's what we're all about. So, with that, thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Bye.